Hi there, and welcome back to the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. I'm Ryan Burr, joined as always by the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, Roger Nick. Roger, certainly Happy New Year to you. 2025 is here, and so glad to be back on the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. Certainly 2024, a historic year for this podcast, and can't wait to get going here in 2025 and bring all these junior golf families and NCAA coaches the latest in and best from junior golf best practices, and certainly going to be a monster year for PDI. We talked so much about it in 2024. Now to see it implemented in 2025, not only in the junior space, but the college space. Can't wait for 2025, and great to get it started with you today, and excited about certainly the podcast. We've got a great guest today, Lisa Strom, the head coach at Ohio State, will be joining us. So Big Ten, certainly she's done a great job there, a top 25 program. So a lot of excitement, Roger. Let's start with the big stuff, though. TGL, will you be tuning in again, or are you one and done?
Happy New Year, Ryan. No, I'm not one and done. I thought it was very interesting, and I think the players kind of got into it. You could see that they were pretty enthusiastic about it. I'm very interested. I'm going to be an interested party right now. I do think that it'd be very interesting to see if they involve any LPGA players at some point. I'm a little shocked that wasn't maybe a mixed team, but anyway, that's beside the point. I like the shot clock. I thought that was interesting. I think the players liked it. I think the concept is fun and interesting.
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, I think a massive, massive fail that you don't have Tiger playing the first one out. I'd love to see what decisions were made to not come out with Tiger versus Rory. I think that the narrative is completely different if they had given us that. I guess what I need to know is this just for the golf fan that watches Thursday and Friday on PGA Tour Live, the hardcore golf fan, or are they trying to make this entertainment? If they're trying to make it entertainment, more like a game show, certainly I think the possibilities there could be endless. But as promised, Roger, we'd like to welcome in the head coach at Ohio State. Another great spring season coming up for the Buckeyes. Welcome in Lisa Strom. Coach, thanks so much for joining us on the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast, getting 2025 started. First of all, Happy New Year to you. I know the spring season is here, although the thermometer might not say golf. We know that the season's right around the corner.
Yeah, well, thanks, for having me on here. I think, it's hard to sometimes fathom that we're getting ready for a spring season when we're shoveling a little bit of snow around here, but we've got a great facility behind me here, and we're excited to get a couple training trips under our belt and then get ready to host our tournament out in California.
Yeah, good. Any new things happening, Coach? Do you guys have any new players starting this fall? What do you have going on this fall or this spring?
Yeah, so from the fall to the spring, we've added one player to our lineup or our roster. So Chloe Lamb, she's from New Zealand, joined us mid-year. So she gets to now experience winter all the time. Whenever she goes home, it's going to be winter. Whenever she's here. So poor thing, I think, doesn't quite know what has hit her in Columbus. I keep telling her it's going to get warmer, I promise. But, as we're seeing the weather move across the country, our Cotton Bowl Friday night, people traveling down there today, though, are going to be battling some icy and snowy conditions. So we're not the only ones battling it.
Absolutely.
No, I'm in Orlando, Coach, and on the way to the school this morning, 37 feels like 28. So even for the Floridians, 28 in Florida is the equivalent to 28 below in Columbus. People just can't.
I always tell people, I grew up in Fargo and then Aberdeen, South Dakota. Fargo.
Oh yeah.
There gets a point where it's cold. It doesn't matter how much colder it gets. It's just never going to feel that much warmer until you get above freezing. So I get it.
So let's jump into certainly Ohio State is a brand all to itself for all collegiate sports. Certainly a great golf tradition. What you've done making the NCAAs on the women's side, building that culture, that tradition. But certainly there are hurdles, as we're discussing, just from a weather perspective compared to some other schools in the United States. So when Ohio State is making the pitch for some of the best players around the world, whether it be New Zealand, California, Florida, Ohio, wherever that is, what is the draw? What is the go-to for you, coach, to introduce the Ohio State to a prospective great college, a great recruit?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think, really what it comes down to is getting really great people here. The saying we have around here is the people, the tradition, the excellence. And the people always do come first. So we're looking, number one, to have great people in our program. You go back in our history through the years, and people like Meg Mallon have really carried that torch forward. Rosie Jones, like, they're great people outside of being great golfers. And Meg actually didn't even have an amazing college career here. She really blossomed afterwards. But we've kept in contact with those people, so it keeps it really relevant to what they've done at the next level on the LPGA Tour. We now have 19 players that have gone on from Ohio State to be LPGA Tour members. We just added 2 this past year with an Epson Tour qualifier and Jessica Pravaznik, and then Kaylee McGinty getting through Q School. But we really want people that want to work hard too, and it's a really tough program to be in if you don't want to put in the work. I coached, a couple other schools, Texas State and Kent State as well. Kent State has a very blue collar mentality as well. It was very businesslike, and I've kind of learned at every stop where I've been to bring that business-like attitude about taking care of what you need to take care of in the classroom, and also getting on the road. And when we go compete, we're going to compete. We don't use excuses of, hey, we have bad weather up here. Usually you kind of get a sense of that early in the recruiting process with a kid, like, I'm kind of talking to a few schools and they seem to be in the South. And I'm like, well, so how much is weather playing a factor? And it's okay, right? Like, we know it's not for everybody, and that's a big part of it too. And so, I think the big pitch around here is you're going to get a great world-class education. You're going to have connections with alumni around the world. I can tell you right now, if there's a kid in Europe that's looking for, hey, I got to find a different instructor, or I'm looking for housing because I'm playing in a NXXT tour event. Do you know anybody that lives here? Like, we've got such a tight-knit community of Buckeyes that they're looking out for you well past your graduation. So I think the number one priority, though, is people that would never use weather as an excuse to get better. We don't miss a day of practice here because of weather. We've got a great facility, whereas, sometimes our competitors in the South, if it starts raining or they've got a thunderstorm, they're waiting it out, or they're missing that day. It might not be a long wait out, but they are. And so, I think we've got a lot of great resources around here too. I think with a lot of the changes in college athletics, people look to Ohio State as a leader in what they're doing and how they're handling all these changes, and how we're able to kind of adapt to the environment we're in and provide such a great, 36 sports here have a great experience, and we really continue to keep that moving forward.
Coach Strom, you just mentioned adapting to changes, and I know looming around in the NCAA and the golf world right now is roster changes and what that might, the implications there. We've now talked to so many coaches, and they're just not worrying about it. They are going to worry about it. Whatever that's happening. I guess in your mind, you guys have such a great tradition of bringing in the right people, bringing in players. Is it going to change your recruiting methodology or process? Is it not?
I think I'm a smaller roster type person anyway. So 9 on the women's side is pretty big in the grand scheme of things. I think on the men's side, you're going to see a lot of changes or shifting of a lot of players, because I think, they just tend to carry a lot more. There's a lot greater talent. There's a lot of, depth of talent on that side, and guys will, be on a 10% scholarship, and they're just loving it because of the experience they get. Right. Where I think on the women's side, we lack the numbers, obviously, in the first part of that. And then if a kid is worthy of a full ride somewhere, they're going to go. A lot of times that makes a big decision for them a lot easier, because they want to take that burden off maybe their mom or dad. So, but, for us, and staying true to who we are, I prefer a smaller roster. We had 6 in the fall. I love the one-on-one time I get to spend with our players. There's nothing that beats it. My favorite time is actually that off-season segment right after our fall season wraps up, where we can dive into their individual time and really kind of figure out a good plan forward for their development. But, I think at the end of the day, there's going to be a spot for kids when they're looking to play college golf somewhere. Yes, our time's changing. Yeah, certainly since 2020, we've had a pretty big shift in a lot of things. So it really just does come down to finding that right fit for the player and weighing out those options of where they might be. But yeah, I think with the roster size, it's not going to really impact on the women's side as much as maybe we'll see on the men's.
Certainly this podcast tailor-made for the junior golf families now around the world. Audience and feedback has been incredible, Coach, about trying to provide parents, families a roadmap, if you will, of how to negotiate making it and playing college golf. We've had now close to 100 podcasts with a different head coach from men's or women's side every week here on the Hub of Junior Golf. And we have gotten massively different responses to how they treat the portal versus junior golf. We've had coaches that have almost gone exclusively to the portal because for whatever their fit is, they seem to think they have more success with that experienced player than taking someone directly out of junior golf. What does that mean? It means it's massively changed junior golf. You only look 4 or 5 years ago, and 99% of players going into college for their first year were coming directly from junior golf around the world or amateur golf from around the world. How have you tackled this whole new world that has players that play college golf available a click away on the portal?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? It's kind of one of those things where sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, right? With a junior golfer coming in, depending on their experience level, maybe a national team member, maybe they've been around the world, they've competed internationally with their team. That to me bodes really well because they've got the experience, they've got good people around them, good coaches around them, developing their games at that early level. And then fast forward to the portal times, it's kind of, well, they've had some experience in traveling in college golf, and they're, well versed in what it's like to balance academics and traveling and do that at a really high level. But sometimes there's reasons they're getting in the portal that you want to try to understand, and it's not always just I'm looking for a better fit. Maybe there was really kind of a not a great locker room feel, or maybe the kid didn't feel like they were getting the playing time they deserve. So you really try to uncover the answer there a little bit. There's certainly some great success stories in the portal. I've been a part of like a few of those. So it's just such an individual case by case. That's such a vague answer for you guys, but we're only bringing in, 2 to 3 players a year. Like that's really the only amount of spots most teams are going to have. So who you're kind of zoning in on, it's not like a recruiting class for football where you're talking to 100 kids. And you come down to the line, it's kind of like you've got 2, 3, 4 kids that you really are really kind of diving in with. And, I think at that point they kind of stand out for their own successes. And if a kid's in the portal and has had huge success, it's kind of eyebrow raising for me sometimes, because it's like, man, why are you leaving a program where you could have, maybe a Hall of Fame career there? I of course played here 25 years ago, and I'm very passionate about Ohio State, but I'm also very loyal. And I think at times I wonder where that's gone in college athletics, and that, that side of things of like, if you transferred out and were at a good football school and another good football school, it's like, who do you cheer for if they ever play? Right. Like I always know who I was going to cheer for. Like, yeah. I think that's where it just kind of maybe frustrates me from a fan side of things, as a, removing the coaching hat. The loyalty factor is a big thing. And it's like, man, that is that going away a little bit?
That's a great perspective to kind of look at it from. NIL has definitely changed a lot, right? I mean,
and really for the good. It might not be quite a question that you've asked, but like, I'm all for it. Like, yes, we're, on the football side, it's a totally different animal. But if a student athlete here at Ohio State can benefit from, some local companies wanting to invest in and support women's sports around here, like, that's stuff that we've got to be able to, willingly be excited about and promote, because I think that's part of evolving with the times too. We can't be kind of so stuck in the mud about, well, this isn't how it used to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do find that, that comes up in my head like that. We never got to do that. But we had a player here from New Zealand when I was the assistant coach, and she was a great artist. Like she could draw, she could paint, she could do all kinds of things. And she wanted to major in fine arts, and she ended up being able to do so, even with the amount of time she'd have to spend in the studios. And we'd come back from a trip and land at, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever. She'd go straight into a studio and do her work. And she couldn't benefit from selling her own artwork. It wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
And that's when I think the light bulb went off for me as a coach in our little sport. How can a player not benefit from something they're really good at off the field? Like, that seemed weird. So it was like almost like her fault that she was a student athlete, right? And that she couldn't benefit. So anyway, I mean, I think it's something that, yes, in the football world, in the basketball world, it's a totally crazy kind of ball game. But for us, it's kind of neat to see like some of the little deals that our players have been able to create, and some excitement around that.
Coach, you mentioned you may have 2 or 3 spots, maybe some years 1 spot, in your recruiting process. We hear from a lot of parents, again, what does it take to play at the Ohio State or any, top program in the country? You're narrowing it down. You're down to, let's say, your last 5 candidates. What are the 3 differences, or what makes the difference that you go, okay, you got the nod?
Yeah, I mean, grades are a big one. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's like, if I don't have to worry about you, I have an unwritten rule. Like, it's not in our team manual, but it's, you can't suck at both. Like, you're not traveling, you better have good grades, because we don't want you hurting our team GPA, right?
Yeah.
And if we have a team GPA goal of 3.5, like, and your individual GPA goal is less than 3.5, I kind of look at them like, are you sure that's where you want your individual goal? Because that's not really helping our team. It's like golf, right? Like, if your individual scoring goal is not helping our team scoring goal, tell me how that adds up, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think grades gives a nod, just because you're not then as concerned, right? Like, there's not that sense of, are they gonna be able to handle this transition? And certainly there is the growing pains of college athletics and travel. But and then I start to kind of look into like potential, right? Like, well, how do you measure that? That's like the magic 8 ball. I wish I had the formula. But if you start talking to their, what's that?
I said, I think we can help you.
Yeah. Well, if you start talking to other, other coaches and how they measure it, it's like, winning at those different levels helps, right? So are they able to kind of, certainly helps. I'm not even so concerned about the high ones that they shoot, but man, if they have the ability to throw in a 67 or a 65, I'll always ask, like, hey, what's your personal best? And they kind of look and they're like, oh, let me think about it. Like, you don't even know? Like, I shot 66 and that was my low ever. And I did it a few times, but like, that was it. And I know where it was. I was just in the state up north, but so, and I think in the women's game, we're looking for some speed and power. And I know at the junior level, they're starting to just tip of the iceberg, develop it, train it, get stronger. That's the big thing for them right now, so that their body can handle adding speed. I think we got to, be careful with adding speed before the bodies are ready for it, because then that injury starts to creep in. But, body size and kind of the build, if you will. Like, if I'm at camp and there's a couple kids there that are tinier, and it's just like, man, will they ever, kind of reach that next level? It's hard to say. But then you get the gritty competitors that are tiny as can be. And Kari Hollenbaugh, to be, perfectly frank, is very undersized and probably underestimated by a lot of people. But man, she's got a grit about her and a tenacity that she loves being the underdog, and she embraces it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that process, especially with junior golf and the prediction model that either keeps a coach's job if they, this is all sports, right? You are making a prediction on whether it's football, basketball, whether it's the number 1 player in the country, or you're taking a wild card because you like something and you just have a gut feeling. You're putting your reputation as the head coach at a school that wants to win, at the end of the day, let's not sugarcoat it. I mean, that your job is to win. At Ohio State, they want to hang banners, right? So your job is to find the very best player you can. What intangibles, after you see the golf score on the rankings and you're intrigued, what is it, what intangibles, what are you looking for? What do you want to see that player on the golf course do that maybe does change your mind?
I think, yeah, it's how they handle themselves, right? That's the big one. Kind of the emotional maturity and regulation out on the golf course. After, maybe a tough hole or a tough stretch of holes, how are they handling, their playing partners? Are they still being cordial with them? Are they being cordial and nice to themselves? Are they beating themselves up, dragging it along? And I get that, right? The spectrum of maturity takes a long time. Sometimes a 14-year-old can be as mature as a 20-year-old, but vice versa, a 20-year-old can be as immature as a 14-year-old. So there's a wide range there of different personalities that we're trying to coach. But yeah, I think certainly the ability to kind of be in the moment though, and structure their process of a pre-shot routine and a post-shot routine, and we're evaluating all that, and that's why seeing players play is an important aspect. There's certain times that you do go kind of sight unseen. You're kind of having video calls and all that with players, but I think those intangibles, making clutch putts at the time when you need to, keeping a round stuck together. I used to call them Elmer's glue putts with my coach when I was playing. Like that 4, 5, 6 footer that you made for par just kept the round going. You made the turn, and then you all of a sudden make a birdie or two, in that back nine. So, yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And then just treating other people really well. Like at the end of the day, if you can be a really good competitor, but shake hands with your playing partners afterwards and be genuinely happy for good golf being played, and maybe you got beat that day. We lose a lot in this game. We in college golf, you don't win very often. And so to celebrate those victories is important, but to also be very, very cordial in defeat is probably even more important.
Yeah, Coach, you've had a lot of success as a player yourself. You've gone out and you've played professionally. You've won some professional events. You played, obviously, had a good career at the Ohio State. What do you do at practices that you can pass that along to your players? We know and we hear again a lot of parents and players are going, I want to go to where somebody's a coach is a player and can really help develop them into that next level player. Is that something that you feel like is a strong suit of yours as a former strong player, as a player today, right? I mean, you're still a good player. So.
And I'm going to show you something. I don't know how many people see this, but it's this. These are a bunch of journals.
I love it.
And these are journals from like my coaching years, not necessarily my playing.
Yeah.
But this is from years of hard work. And you look back, and we talk a lot about journaling around here. You can't remember as much as you think you're going to remember. Like, what was I doing when I was playing well? What was I doing when I was coaching and we had a good stretch going? Like, you can look back on those things. And we ask our players to have their notebooks and journals with them a lot. Each player gets one of these when they come into our program.
Mm-hmm.
And, at first they're kind of like, this is messy and I don't even know what I'm supposed to write about. Dear diary, what it's like a diary of the day. What do I write? I'm like, just start writing.
Yeah.
Just be self-aware. Just write what you're thinking right now. Like so many of the kids, and I, 25 years ago, yes, we had different distractions, but there's a lot more information now distracting them from the task at hand. And so even pressing pause in a team meeting, be like, hey, just write down what you're thinking about right now. It might not be what we're talking about, but let's get present. So yeah, that's probably the essence of my coaching is to like really get with the people and the person and dive into like, hey, how are we going to pull out the best out of you? And a lot of it comes back to mindfulness, breathing, and being able to journal it and have a practice plan, right? So in my playing days, it was like you didn't just show up to show up, and I learned that from Therese, right? Like she was on the LPGA tour. I wanted to play for someone that had played at the next level. I remember her showing us a video of her on a VHS tape. We didn't know it was her, but she showed it to us. She's like, this player was an All-American. This player went on to get her LPGA tour card. She's like, do you know who this is? And the golf swing was awful. And of course, none of us knew. And then it was her. And, we kind of roll our eyes at the time. But I'm like, gosh, I find myself doing the same things now. And, we do know a thing or two. We're just trying to shorten your learning curve so that you guys don't make as many mistakes as we do. But they learn so much from messing up, right? And making those mistakes. They laugh with us when we make mistakes. So there's a fun part of it. And I think what I try to do is I keep myself in fairly decent shape, working out, doing some speed training just to keep competitive. And they see that. It's not necessarily to like keep up with them. It's they see that I'm putting in work into something valuable that I see as valuable. And when we're asking them to be in the gym or journal, like they see me doing it, and it's like, oh, she's not asking us to do something she's not willing to do.
Love it.
Roger, certainly, PDI is something that more and more teams and coaches and junior golfers are doing. That's what we're trying to do with the Notificator, coach, is along with your score and ranking and your tournaments, is be able to give coaches a score that is apples to apples around the world, just as far as it's not the end all if you only have a one-way shot. Certainly, Rose Zhang has worked out a pretty nice career hitting the ball one way. But do you find that if there was more information from junior golfers around the world that was easily attainable as you started the process of recruiting, that would be an advantage as you try to narrow down your decision-making process?
Yeah, I think, data is important, right? Like, and the intangible stuff is important too, to be able to evaluate kids. I've thought a lot about this in recruiting. I've mentioned it to a couple of coaches. I'm like, I'd love to just set a TrackMan down behind a tee box and sell the login information to 10 of my, closest colleagues that are watching the same kids and be like, hey, it's $10 for all that. Like, who hasn't brought it? Like, why have we not put a TrackMan down on the first tee at the Orange Bowl or something?
Right.
Like, I just don't get it. So trying to get that stuff where it's in competition as opposed to like, hey, this is my best TrackMan report ever, and try to kind of filter it down a little bit. But I think it's certainly something that coaches are thirsty for. Everyone's looking for obviously an advantage or try to get the slight edge on or the recruiting process with kids. But I think it also gives kids a better understanding of the like thresholds of, hey, you've got to be at this point to be competitive. I know in working with Mark Sweeney and Name Point, like 29 putts around out on the LPGA tour, like that is just like standard. You can't, like, there's no black and white about, like, there's no gray about it. It's very black and white. If you're at averaging 31, 32, 30, like, you're not going to make money. And that's okay to tell people the truth. He's right. Like, I've had people fire me because I've told them this, and like, you're just not good enough yet. He's like, I'd rather tell them the truth and then them sit and think about it later on, maybe after they're mad at me, and then get better at putting, whether it's with me or not. But he's like, I'm not going to sit there and sugarcoat it. Like, these are standards that have to be met. So I think if there's any way, to connect the community, I've talked about, with TrackMan, we were able to play against others online, right? Like, how cool would it be for junior golfers to, hey, between 7 and 8 o'clock, like, women on the women's team are going to be online on TrackMan online, and you can actually see what's going on. Like, what's their swing speeds? How do they compare? You can hit shots and compare yours. Like, I think with this whole TGL, I watched it on Tuesday, as ready as I am, right? I think there's some things they can make it a little bit more fun or entertaining, but I think like side bets and stuff, I'm like, they've got to be doing more of this. Like, there's no side action on shots, but there's got to be a way to kind of connect that gap between junior golf and college golf so that those kids can kind of see, like, oh, I'm in the ballpark. Oh, wow, they're really good at that.
Yeah. Coach, I know it brings me to the point. I don't know if have you heard of Player Development Index? Are you familiar?
Out of the convention. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you probably talked to some of the guys. Yeah. I mean, because, again, a little bit of what you're saying is really what that's all about, right? So it's like, assessing a junior golfer, and we've now assessed over 70 of the top Division I, programs. And we see the numbers that correlate to players at that level, from the mental assessment to physical and golf skills assessment. And we see that correlation between, a junior golfer, maybe having a high golf score as a developing golfer, and their PDI score is low, and their PDI score goes up, and you see their golf scores go down. So we see that correlation, and we've now been able to see now almost 20 years of this connection between as a player gets to a PDI score of above 70, it is in that range of playing at the very best schools out there. So it's a little bit to your point, and that is a big part of what we're trying to accomplish from the PDI perspective, is helping coaches realize and helping players and families realize there is a way to get there, right? There are tangible ways to actually see if you're, in that range of playing. And to your point, and which I love, is being truthful and honest and saying, you're just not good enough yet. I was very fortunate enough to, and one reason, the impetus for me to create the PDI was I was working with Rick Jensen, who was a renowned sports psychologist at the time, and I went down to see him, and his assessment was 5 shots. You only got 5 shots from 150 yards. He threw balls out on the fairway, in the rough, and in the fairway bunker. And if you didn't hit the green with at least 4 of those 5 shots, you just weren't good enough. And he would say, "You don't need me. You need to go get better."
Right.
And so over time, it really helped me, realize that, why aren't we doing that more? Now, my background was in exercise science in baseball and football. So having, 5 tools, evaluations, and as well as looking at the NFL combine or, football combines, we don't do that for golf. And I never really understood why a golf athlete is treated so differently. So you got to have the all skills.
Yeah, we try to test things and then we don't follow up either. We're really bad at that. Like, we get these great ideas from the convention and we come back and we're all gung-ho, and then we do it once and we forget. So, and we're kind of in the middle of assessments right now. When we come back from break, I always try to get like a baseline speed test and a line test out of, a decade, and a wedge combine, just to kind of get them like, oh, I'm going to have to answer to these numbers when I come back too. So, but we've got to do, as coaches, we've got to do better with tracking. And that's where, like, obviously the journaling comes in too.
Yeah, that's right. It's hard. It is. It's hard to have all of that.
The goal obviously would be, in a perfect world where if every player on your team for the last 10 years had a PDI score, and every junior golfer had a PDI score, the way it works is obviously the better player, the better score they have, but it also does predict things like the ability to improve. So certainly we believe that that's where golf and the sport is heading from a recruiting standpoint, but certainly what you're doing, the journaling, getting your players to buy in, it's been impressive. Tell us a little bit about your schedule this spring, how you get your team to be able to hit the ground running. I know that I've been to the facility at Ohio State. It is as good as it gets, and they're getting better and better. Certainly, schools are catching up, and some are taking it to a whole new level. As there is a bit of a war going on of who has the best facility. But how do you prepare your ladies to hit the ground running? Because you said no one's looking for excuses when you play that first event.
Yeah, no doubt. So we've got 2 players right now that are on the road. One's at the Sally, Kari Hollenbaugh is playing there, and then Nellie Ong is down competing with Team England down at the South American AM in Chile. So, certainly impressed with both of them throughout their time here at Ohio State, but they love to compete. So it's awesome to see that. Faith Choi played it out at the Patriot All-America, as well as Kari. They both played great out there. So, we're having a lot of success kind of in that in-between season, that shoulder season a little bit. And then, we get going. We take 2 training trips to kind of really knock off any rust that maybe has accumulated over the break. But we'll go down to Concession next weekend, have a great time down there. Bruce Cassidy is a great supporter of Ohio State Athletics, owns that place.
Great spot.
Awesome spot.
Yeah.
Although it'll be a little chilly down there in your terms, in Florida terms, right?
Yeah.
And then we're going to go down the following weekend to the other coast, and we've got some great Buckeye people down there, including Meg. So we'll get to see her and spend some time around her for the Martin Luther King holiday. So
you're going to be at Pine Tree?
Well, we typically try to get out to Pine Tree. We're going to High Ridge.
Oh, sure.
And then, Jupiter Hills, and working on that 3rd spot. So Jay Coughlin, a former player here, is helping us out a little bit on the MLK Day. So we're excited about those trips, though. We host a tournament in California that first week of February, gearing up for that. Everybody will travel to that event. So obviously, for junior golfers out there, it's always nice when you host events. that you can pretty much take your team, or they all play as individuals if they're not playing for the team. So we'll travel everybody out there and come back, and then we go down to the Spartan Suncoast, which will be back down in that Sarasota area.
A question I get a lot, and we'll let you go. I'm sorry for this one, but it is a question I get from a lot of families, that when you do play at an Ohio State, how do you, so much of that college sport is about qualifying for a spot, and that, the best player gets to go. And certainly in the fall, that's 100% true. How do you decide who your team is for those first couple events?
Yeah, so we weigh in kind of how they did in the fall, right? Like you can't just, the body of work does speak pretty loudly around here. So I always tell them, hey, take care of business in the fall, and you're really not gonna have too much of an issue heading into the spring anyway. We'll definitely take into account what we do down in Florida. This first practice weekend, we'll only have 5 of them with us, but it's those kind of swing players that have been in and out of the lineup, and then adding our new player, kind of just seeing where she kind of fits in, right, and getting to know her. So and then that second trip back down, we'll probably do some actual pencil to scorecard for sure. And whether they're playing for one spot, or hey, this is going to be one spot and then everybody else will be individuals. But we kind of, it's hard not to kind of already know most of your lineup at this point, and who you're not going to travel with as you kind of head towards those spring. But yeah, certainly in the winter months up north, every coach might have a different angle on it, but the body of work is the big part.
So on the event you host in California that every player will go to, have you ever had a scenario where one of your individuals had the best overall score of everyone on your team, and then what does that mean?
Hasn't happened out in LA, but it did happen at our tournament 2 springs ago, I want to say now, 2 Aprils ago, where an individual actually finished second in the event.
Wow.
And so we were still playing 6 count 4 Big Ten, and she wouldn't have been, because we played 6 count 4 for our home tournament as well, the Tree Session Buckeye Invitational. And so she was kind of our 7th man that week, and ended up finishing second in the event, and worked her way into going to the Big Ten championship with us, and then on to regionals. So yeah, those things happen, right? And I always tell them, I'm like, yep, make us look silly, right? Like that's your job, to make me look really bad and be like, why didn't you put me in the lineup? But again, the body of work would not have probably led anyone to think that, she should have quite been in that spot. But she grew up here. She grew up in Columbus and grew up a member of Ohio State Golf Course. So she knows the place like the back of her hand, and really got it going that week. And it was neat to see. We've had some walk-ons win tournaments, so I think those are important things too, of like back in probably maybe the year or 2 after I graduated, there was a player that won our home tournament, and she was a walk-on from Ohio up in the Northeast area. And those are the kind of the stories that you love to hear, because there is time to improve in college. It's maybe accelerated a little bit now, but yeah, I think it's kind of, don't always assume like the 5-man can't win, right? I talked to a lot of our players about, like, I don't want you to feel like you have to win the golf tournament, but when things get going, like, you're just as good or good enough to win the golf tournament. Like, I think sometimes they feel like that's their role, and I just need to live in this lane. And sometimes their eyes aren't open to the fact that, like, wow, if I play really well, I could have a chance to win too.
No doubt.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you for coming on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast today. Sorry for keeping you, but you're a wealth of knowledge. We appreciate it. Best of luck this spring for the Buckeyes, and we'll be watching.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on, and go Bucks.
All right,
you got it.
Thank you,
Go
Coach.
Bucks. Have a good one.
You too.
Well, certainly, Roger, a lot of great information there from Coach. And, I think there is a pretty major announcement coming on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast. I want to say it will be next week. That is going to be a game changer with PDI and the junior golf space, something that's never happened before, that will make it a household name in junior golf. I think it's becoming a household name as we move along here. The reception at the college convention was overwhelming. And even the coaches that don't know it, they all describe it. And that's how you know you have something. That's how you know that eventually everything that they're describing as their wish list is actually available in PDI. And it, things don't happen overnight. As they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, but everything Coach Strom was looking for, it's out there. And as more and more junior golfers have that PDI score, that wealth of knowledge for coaches is going to be a massive determining factor. Like I said, you take a lady junior golfer, a girl junior golfer that averages 72, you're talking about 1,000 players that all have the same scoring average.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to whittle that down. A college coach is supposed to whittle that down and make a assessment that affects his or her job when she has 1,000 people or he has 1,000 people that he can't see them all. So that information, that PDI score, and like I said, I don't want to give away too much, but big stuff coming with PDI, and we'll be first to announce it right here on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast, Roger.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting stuff. And just listening to Coach Strom there, talk about her program and what she does, you can the professionalism, you can hear the difference in the structure, and so exciting to hear her talk about all the things that we talk about and what we measure in PDI. I mean, from the mental side to all of those things that actually make or break a player when they're going through this transition. So really excited about the news that we're going to have next week or in the weeks to come.
Yep. No, I think we're pretty close. And so with that said, be sure to be tuning in next week, as it will be a game changer in junior golf, something that's never been done or offered before. So we're excited for, as you said, the next couple of weeks. Here's a big announcement coming on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast. Again, Happy New Year to everyone out there. Certainly 2025. We wish you all the best on and off the golf course with your junior player. For those in their junior and senior year, obviously this is a monster time for them. And we know that events are already happening in the 2025 calendar. So, we're hoping that this podcast can continue to be a map, if you will, that's going to help you get your junior golfer to reach their dreams. So for our director, producer, Michael Nick, for Roger Nick, I'm Ryan Burr. We'll see you back here next week, 2025. Big year on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast.